First of all, I'd like to say something about the background of the two countries, which I think need to be kept in perspective, because this would be helpful for me to discuss where India and China may compete and where India and China may cooperate. China and India are no ordinary countries, not only because of their size, they're large size countries. They are the only two billionaire population countries. Both of them have populations above 1 billion. The third country is America, which is way down at 350 million or so. And what is significant about these two countries is that they were considered developed countries by then prevailing contemporary standards till about 250 years ago. India and China's share in the world GDP, right from the year 1000, for which some kind of estimation is possible, right from 1000 AD all the way up till about 1750, at in excess of 50% of the world GDP. And the population was about 40%. Today, the percentage has come down to 15%, but in 1947, 47, India became independent. China had a revolution, communist revolution. In 1949, a new People's Republic was founded. And around this period, say around 1950, the combined share of the two countries was just 7%. So from 50%, it had declined. There's no two countries, or not a single country anywhere in the world which has this kind of history. There are countries which were underdeveloped and became developed, like Europe and the United States. And there are countries which are developing today, like countries of East Asia and Africa. But India and China are the only two countries which were developed once upon a time by then contemporary standards, and then became poor because of a variety of special reasons such as imperialism, and now are in the process of growing, and the two countries are growing at the rate, leaving aside the last year, at the rate of about in excess of 8.5%. Of course, it's very difficult to compare India and China economically unless you are an insider, which means you must know how data is produced in China. India has a long tradition in producing data, statistical data. Our first census took place in 1871, and every 10 years we have held a census. But China's first census ever in its history was held in 1982. And they don't have the tradition of collecting statistics as we do. But more importantly, the Chinese concepts are different from the international concepts. For example, food grains. Every country weighs food grains after the paddy husk is taken away. But China is the only country which weighs food grains by including rice as paddy, that is, the husk is included. China is the only country which includes potatoes in food grains. So consequently, there is an inflation of figures. China's calculation of current prices and constant price estimates are very, very faulty. And therefore, it is never advisable to compare data produced in the statistical abstract of China without first going through a data correction. And I was the first one to do it in the field, and that's why I earned a name. And that is why, despite the fact that I don't do any academic work in India, I'm a full-time politician, but every year Harvard wants me to come and teach for one semester at least, and the summer semester for me is the most convenient because it's so highly compressed, and it's too hot in India to do politics anyway. So therefore, what can be done in India sitting at home and in an air-conditioned room and telephoning, I can do it from here too. So this is two extraordinary aspects. One, they were developed countries, and now they are regaining their position. That is how now the London economists and other new magazines, influential magazines, are portraying it. They are saying that India and China are recovering their positions. Now, in terms of GDP calculated after using purchasing power parity prices, not exchange rates. I do not multiply divide by Indian rupees GDP by 50 or 47 or whatever is the exchange rate dollar to get the dollar estimate, but actually compare prices in the United States and prices in India and then calculate the ratio and then take a weighted average. That number is different from 46, 47. It's much lower. It's closer to 26. So therefore, the purchasing power parity rates, by using that, today the number one GDP country in the world is the United States, number two GDP country in the world is China, and number three since 2008, after overtaking Japan, is India. So in fact today there is a triangular situation: United States, China, India. And whether this is going to be a triumvirate or it is going to be a triangle is going to be a very important question in the future. And we have to decide whether India is going to be with China against the United States or India is going to be with the United States against China. And hopefully it never happens that China and the United States combine against India. So that's the first part. Second part is that they are very fast growing countries. There are very few countries, certainly of this kind of size, there's no other country in the world where it is growing at 8.5% per year. Official statistics of China put it at 10.5% per year. But as a rule of thumb, I would say, if you ever see the United Nations figures, United Nations doesn't correct these figures because they don't have the nerve to correct Chinese figures. Chinese influence today, the international bodies are so strong that that no international agency, whether it's the United Nations or the IMF or the World Bank, makes these corrections. It has to be done by scholars, and that's why my latest book, which is just appeared, which I have prescribed as a text at Harvard, is called Economic Development and Reforms in India and China. I of course published in India because it's much faster to produce, publish books in India. If I try to publish it in the United States, it will go to a referee and he may not like me and he may delay it for 2-3 years. There's usually a backup of 2-3 years. So therefore I've published it in India, and it's also much cheaper. You can get the book here at $30 airfare paid. So therefore, if you are interested in knowing in detail about the two economies in comparative perspective, you can refer to my book. And third important thing, and this is something that has to be fed into your mind every time you discuss India and China. These two countries are neighbors. They are large neighbors, but except for 1962, never in the relationship of 2,700 years, I mean known relationship, there may have been relations even earlier, but known relationship from 2,700 years, there's never been a conflict. The two have lived in peace side by side, except for that 1962 period.